The vibes are just right today. I've got the U-log on the TV going. My iced coffee is just hitting. The cold foam ratio, stunning. Couldn't be better. It's just like a beautiful cozy day at home. I'm really vibing it. And I'm so excited because we're talking about two of my favorite things, budgeting and travel, and like the combination of both. Today I'm doing my long-awaited US budget breakdown. I've had so many requests from you guys that are planning a similar trip, or some of you that are just curious in like the financial side of travel. I feel like no one really talks about this, the nitty-gritty numbers. So I tracked every single dollar, every single cent that we spent on our 3-week trip around the US, and we're gonna be going through seeing what we spent. I'll also share what we did and any tips that I would recommend for anyone that is planning a similar trip. I feel like there's a lot of you guys at the moment. I've had so many messages from you asking for like suggestions, where we stayed. So I'm going to be running through all of that. I also have some just general travel tips as well. As a former travel agent, I feel like I have credentials. But the thing about travel though, and I will preface with this, it is so individual. And I mean, the same goes for anything really, especially when it comes to personal finance. But what works for some people, or what some people value compared to others, is not going to be the same thing. So take this with a pinch of salt. You may also be trying to work in an entirely different budget. And I truly believe you could do this for a lot cheaper, also for a lot more. For context, our trip was 17 days in total. We traveled from the 22nd of April and returned on the 9th of May. It was for 2 adults. So myself and my husband, we share 100% of our money. So this is for 2 people. And we did 4 cities. We did LA, Boston, New York, and San Francisco. We also flew in from Adelaide. Normally when we travel, I think a big priority for us is food. And I guess it was in this trip, but to be deadly honest, I think we're really spoiled here in Australia with the freshness and the produce that we have available. Nothing over there really compares to it. Even the same in the UK. I'm originally from there. The produce is just not at the same level as we have here. And so normally we might try maybe a couple of nice restaurants. We didn't really prioritize that on this trip. It was more about the fast food and, you know, your In-N-Out, your Chick-fil-A, Taco Bell, like things that we don't have here in Australia. This trip, we really prioritized activities. There was a lot of classic touristy things that we wanted to see and do. We didn't hire a car. The only place that we probably could have done with one is in LA, just because everything is so spread out. We were spending a lot of money on Ubers and we didn't feel particularly safe using public transport. That was just our experience. And then when we were in Boston, San Francisco, and New York especially, we totally utilized public transport. It's the easiest, best way to get around. Or walking. We did a ton of walking, like 30,000 steps a day, depending on where we were. As for how we actually planned and tracked everything for our trip, I switched between 2 different platforms. The first one is the travel planner from CoPlenty, which is the same business I have my monthly budget with. I'll have a link down below because I think my discount code also works on this as well. If you guys are planning a similar trip or just like any travel in general, it's so handy. They released this kind of towards the end when we were nearly done with planning our trip, so I didn't get to utilize all of the features, but I'll definitely be using this for our Europe trip later this year. This is kind of how everything looks. So you've got your trip overview, destination, start date, end date, duration, tasks, packing, which I didn't really get to use these. You can upload your own little photos. So I've got my vision board because there's like New York, flying, you know, just set the vibe, set the mood. Spending summary, what's left to spend, actual spendings, and then our planned budget. Also an overview of where all of our money went. And then you've got your trip schedule as well, which is so handy. Then we've got our trip calculator, trip expenses, task list, packing list. And then you can also do your daily itinerary, which is super cool. They also have a currency converter. So while we were planning, a lot of the stuff was in USD. So this was just an easy way to be like, what is $5 in AUD? 751. Just an easy way to convert everything. So that's what we use for the financial tracking side of things, which we'll get into later. But for the actual nitty gritty logistics, keeping track of activities, and just like mapping out where was best to go, I'm the kind of person, especially because we're in a bit of a time crunch. We're only over there for like 2.5 weeks. We had a lot that we wanted to see and do. We wanted to try and avoid as much backtracking as possible. And this app, you guys, one of you recommended it. Game changing. Absolutely game changing. It's called Wonderlog. I'm sure many of you have probably heard of it. You can write little lists. We've got like a grocery list because I knew as soon as we got to LA I wanted to get groceries. We were staying in like an apartment style place with a full kitchen, so I pre-wrote our grocery list because I knew we'd be so tired and so jet lagged. Very forward thinking of me, I will say, and I've even got prices down there. I was literally on the Target website being like, how much is this? Because I'm insane like that, but I just like to know what I'm in for. And one of my favorite features is it will tell you how far away things are from each other. So between where we were staying and Grand Central Market, it was a 15-minute walk, 2-minute drive, or 10 minutes using public transport. And look at this, you can see exactly where everything is on the map. So we've got like our second stop of the day, and then the other day is blue. So you can kind of see if you're going to be doing too much overlapping or too much backtracking. Obviously it depends on like what you want to fit into your day. And there were some things that we had to move around or we just weren't in the mood for. I'm not like super type A where we absolutely must follow the itinerary to a T. I just like going somewhere and knowing the things that I want to do, the things that I want to see, and in an ideal world how that would pan out and flow for the day. But if we weren't in the mood or we weren't vibing it or we saw something else that we preferred, of course we can rejig everything. So yeah, this is an example of our day. So we woke up on Wednesday, we got Leon's Bagels, which was 16 minutes on the subway. You can even change the photos. Look at this. Like, I don't like that photo. Let me find a different one. Oh, look at that. Then it's a 27-minute walk, which we actually took the subway for this one. So 15 minutes on the subway to the 9/11 Memorial Museum. I've got our admission time, the cost of that in AUD. Then we took the subway to Cornelia Street, 5-minute walk to the Friends Building, 13-minute walk to Whitney Museum of American Art. You can add little notes to the gift shop. They have a $10 photo booth and $1 prints. They definitely still have the $1 prints, but we could not find the photo booth anywhere. We originally planned to go to the Chelsea market, but if you guys watch the vlogs, we were so full still from breakfast. We didn't end up doing that and we switched it with a different day. We did the High Line and then we went to TKTS to get Broadway tickets. Then on another day we did Central Park. So I've got all the spots in Central Park that we wanted to hit. It's just so cool. I really, really recommend. And you know me, I love a visual. I think I can actually share this, so I'll have a link down below if you guys want to see what we did for our US trip. Anyway, getting into the nitty-gritty numbers because I know that's what you're all here for. And I'm just faffing on. But going back to the travel planner, I basically switched between two different tabs on here. So we have the trip calculator, which I used to track everything that we spent before we left. So anything that we pre-booked in terms of flights, activities, accommodation, anything that was already booked and paid for in our local currency, I put in here. That way I could see before we'd even left the country, we had already spent $13,176.88. And of our $20,000 budget, we had $6,823.12 left to spend when we were actually over there. We've also got our trip details, destination US, budget goal 20,000, traveling from the 22nd of April to the 9th of May, 17 days, 2 adults, 0 children, 0 pets. I wish we could have brought Mabel with us. And then of course we've got our little graphs, a little breakdown, love a visual. So yeah, before we'd even left the country, we had spent over $13,000. What have we spent that money on, you might ask? Firstly, flights. I feel like that's a given, especially flying from Australia and Adelaide in particular. We are so far removed from pretty much everywhere in the world. It's just going to cost a pretty penny to get most places. So we flew Fiji Airways. Really recommend them, especially if you're flying out of Adelaide. They have a direct, or not direct, but you don't have to go through Sydney, Brisbane or Melbourne, which is really nice. We of course flew economy and our flights were $1,836.35. which is pretty good. I did save a little bit of money, maybe like a couple $100 each, because I was working as a travel agent when I booked those. So I got agent rates, but you could definitely get similar prices depending on when you book and when you go. If you are looking for cheap prices, I'd really recommend obviously keeping an eye on sales. I'd really recommend trying to book in advance as much as possible. The sooner you book, usually the cheaper the airfare is. The way it works with airfares is they'll have a set number of seats, say like 10 seats at this price. And then once those are sold, they'll go up to the next level with another 10 seats. Once those are sold, it'll go. So like the better the availability, the better the price, typically. Also try and fly on a Tuesday, Wednesday or Thursday. Those are usually the cheapest days to fly, obviously within reason. Traveling in shoulder seasons, out of school holidays, paying attention to like spring break, summer break if you're going into the northern hemisphere. Basically like out of peak is usually cheaper, which is what we did. And then for our internal flights, we flew Delta Airlines from LA to Boston. That was $643.72 for both of us. And then American Airlines from JFK to San Francisco, which was $700.60 for both of us. One of the best ways that we were able to save money was booking red-eye flights. They're usually a lot cheaper. It also means you don't have to pay for a night of accommodation because you're flying overnight. And you really get to maximize your time in your destination because you're not traveling until the evening. Like we didn't take off until 9:30 and we arrived at 6:08 a.m. in Boston. So really making the most of our time whilst we were away, avoiding paying for a night of accommodation saves us like to $300, and it actually worked out perfectly. When we arrived in Boston, the hotel let us check in at 7 a.m, which was so nice, like almost a full day early. So in total, we spent $5,017.02 on our flights. That was international and internal, which is not too bad. The amount of travel that we did from one side of the country to the other and back, pretty good. And then in terms of accommodation, these are the places we stayed. So in LA, we stayed in Level Los Angeles, which was in downtown LA. Not for everyone. Personally felt very safe. I enjoyed the location. I thought it was fine. We stayed there for 4 nights and that was $1,288.14. I also love this one because it was an apartment, which was really nice. So we were able to do some washing. They had a stunning pool and like full basketball court. It was also really close to the Staples. Is it Staples Center? I don't think it's called that anymore. Crypto Arena. Yeah, it was in a good location in that regard. And yeah, that was $1,288.14 for 4 nights. Then in Boston, we stayed in the Colonnade Hotel, which is in the Back Bay area. Really liked it. Staff were lovely. And that was $1,257.11. Most of the places we stayed in were like a 4-star hotel. And then in New York, we stayed in the Knickerbocker, which is actually a 5-star hotel. It was really nice. I actually booked this one during Black Friday. They had a special sale going on. So for 5 nights, that was $1,972.58. That was in Times Square, which kind of a prime location, especially if you're a tourist. And then in San Francisco, we stayed at Hotel Casa. That was $766.41 for 2 nights. I liked the hotel itself. The staff, not great. The location, good. Staff, not great. They also took 5 weeks to return our hotel deposit, which was annoying. And then another expense to factor in is resort fees or hotel destination fees. This is something that I feel like a lot of people forget about or just like don't realize. Basically everywhere in the US will charge a destination fee. Don't ask me what it is. It's something to do with like the amenities and taxes or something. Like, I don't, what's a destination fee? I'm gonna Google it. Hotel resort fees, also called amenity or destination fees, are pesky additions to your hotel bill that cover anything from Wi-Fi to parking. It doesn't really explain it. Pool use, gym access, towel services, Wi-Fi, shuttle service. Basically just an extra fee. So I budgeted $550 for those. You do have to pay them at the destination, so in USD, which was annoying. And on average, I'd say they're about $30-35 US per night. So something to keep in mind if you are planning a US trip. There's similar things in Europe as well, like a city tax. So in total for accommodation, we spent $5,284.24. Then for transit, our train from Boston to New York was only $97.60 for both of us, which I thought was such a good deal. We were looking at flights and they were so much more expensive. Then you also have to factor in getting an Uber to and from the airport, being at the airport like 2 hours early, then getting a taxi from JFK to New York City. Like there's just so many extra expenses and it just would have worked out a lot more costly and also like less time efficient. So we took the train and it was lovely. We got to see a bit more of the US, the countryside, if you will. We were there within like 4 hours. It was stunning. So yeah, $97.60 for the Amtrak. Gorge. And then I budgeted $1,000 for extra transit. So anything from Ubers, which was a big one, especially to and from the airport at places. Obviously in LA, we didn't hire a car, so I knew we'd be Ubering everywhere. And then any public transport as well. When we were in New York, we walked or took the subway everywhere. In New York, you can buy a 7-day pass or you can just scan your card, like your travel money card or your debit card. Then once it reaches a threshold, which I think is $35 US, it won't charge you for the rest of the week. So that's what we did. Worked out really well. So I budgeted $1,000 for extra transit, but we only pre-booked $97.60 for that. And then in terms of activities, I tried to pre-book as much as possible before we left. That way we were paying in Australian dollars, so it worked out cheaper, and it also meant we were guaranteed to do whatever we wanted to do. We weren't missing out on anything. So we did Warner Brothers, we did a Hollywood tour, Universal Studios. We paid for the express pass as well, which I really recommend if you're going to Universal Studios Hollywood. We did a Ghosts and Gravestones tour in Boston. We did Top of the Rock, which was only $32.89 because I had a credit from Valletta, which is what I use to pre-book all of our tours and activities. I highly recommend. This isn't sponsored, but I just love them. I use them all the time when I worked as a travel agent myself for booking my own clients. It's just so good. What I love as well is you can reserve things. So what I would do, I would go on like a little shopping spree, if you will, when the exchange rate was at its best, and I would pre-book a ton of different activities. They would reserve and hold at that price with the best exchange rate, but the money wasn't debited from my account until 48 hours before the actual activity. So a lot of the stuff came out when we were over there, which was so nice. Keeping our money in our account for as long as possible, making our money work for us. Yeah, Top of the Rock, 9/11 Memorial. We did a Muirwoods and I can still never say it. I've literally been there. I can't say it. Sausalito. That was a little day tour that we did in San Francisco. It was beautiful. We did Summit 1 in New York. We paid for a Yankees game as well in New York, which was $143.06, and an NBA game, which was $289.87. And then I budgeted $500 for anything that kind of came up as we went. Food and drink, I budgeted $3,500 for 2.5 weeks, 2 people, all 3 meals out every day, and coffee. Can't forget the coffee. And then for our other expenses, things that you don't even think about, we have our travel insurance, which was $485.95. That was for premium cover with a $250 excess. Travel insurance for the US is obviously a lot higher just because medical costs are very expensive over there. That was also with a staff discount as well from my work. Then we have our visa, of course, that was $65.95. And then shopping, I also wanted to include in other expenses, so it would show up in our trip expenses. But yeah, travel insurance and visa, that was $551.90. And then when we were over there, I just tracked everything with our trip expenses. So you could break it down into different categories. We've got transit, food and drink, activities, and then accommodation as well. So when we paid for the resort fees, I included them in here. Pretty much everything we paid for using the Wise travel money card, honestly the best. It was so good. You can even do it using Google Pay, which is so handy. There was a couple things that we put on another travel money card. So that was under debit card. I just kind of needed a way to differentiate between the two. And then we really didn't pay for anything using cash. One time we tipped for our celebs home tour. That was $20. So in terms of our spending money, we spent $2,356.38. This is USD, by the way, or 48.9% of our spending money on food and drink, which I kind of expected. That's always our biggest expense, especially because we pre-booked all of our activities. Transit, we spent $985 USD. So I know that's going to be more than 1,000. I'm going to add all of this up at the end. So we've got like the real numbers. Activities or additional activities, we spent $443.83. I'm trying to think what else we did. Let's have a look. What wasn't pre-booked? Oh, we did the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, so that was $40 USD. $176 USD for the Broadway show, which I really recommend unless you're like dead set on going to a specific Broadway show. Go to the TKTS booth when you're in Times Square. They do day of tickets like half price, which is what we did, and we got to see Aladdin. We were literally 7 rows from the front, like a prime spot. That was the show that we wanted to see. Obviously we didn't want to get our hearts set on it too much. Yeah, it was amazing. Really recommend doing that for a way to save money. Oh, $60 for the Tenement Museum in New York, which I also really recommend. They have different apartments that they've kind of set up with these different stories of immigrant families from different periods throughout history. It's so interesting. And then we also spent $90.50 on Alcatraz when we were in San Francisco. So those were our extra activities. We spent $363.02 for our resort fees, and then $672.41 on shopping. So that was where all of our spending money went. I'm going to update the trip calculator with all of the conversions into AUD and see exactly how much we spent and how close we were to budget. All right, guys, it may or may not be the next day because my camera decided to die, but I've got the final numbers. I've converted everything from USD to AUD. And as you guys know, our original budget amount was $20,000. Our total spend for our trip was $406.69. So close to being on budget. I'm actually really happy with this. Kind of as we went and as we could see everything adding up, we were like, you know what? If we go a little bit over, like I knew we had a couple of $1,000 buffer because we were still getting paid while we were traveling, and other than our mortgage and a couple of bills, we really didn't have any other expenses. So yeah, $400 over budget. Pretty happy with that, especially with the exchange rate. Our biggest expense was accommodation. We spent $5,828 on that, or 28.6% of our overall budget. Second biggest expense was flights. Of course, that was $5,017 or 24.6% of our budget. 7.6% went towards other expenses. So that was our visa, travel insurance, and any shopping we did. Food and drink, we spent $3,533.98 Aussie dollars. Then activities, $2,891, and transit, $1,574.91. Most of that was Ubers and Lyfts, which is kind of a lot. The place that we spent the most amount of money in was LA, which doesn't really surprise me. Everything felt just a little bit more expensive there. And then factoring in not using public transport, which is definitely a choice. And we didn't want to rent a car. So a lot of our money went towards that. And then also the activities we chose to do. We did Universal Studios with an express pass. That was over $600. We also went out for a nice meal, but we still spent over $700 more than we did in New York. And we were in New York for 2 days longer. So kind of crazy. The second most expensive city for us was of course New York. We spent $3,174.95. Food was like relatively cheap, and transport was so easy and so affordable. I just found it overall a lot easier to eat on a budget in New York, I found. Our most expensive meal was at Catch LA. This was for our anniversary dinner, our 2-year wedding anniversary. We spent $240.96 USD, which converted is $361.26. To be honest, we didn't order a ton of food. We actually kept it quite low key, but the conversion rate is just awful. Then you have to factor in the tip and tax. So it adds up quite quickly. I think we ordered 3 rolls of sushi, an appetizer, and a couple of drinks. It was quite expensive, but the whole ambiance, the whole experience just felt very luxe. I would do it again. I have no regrets. It was a fun experience. And then our cheapest meal was in New York. We went to Two Bros Pizza for dinner. They do a 2-slice and soda deal for $3.99. So our total for dinner together came to less than $8. And the pizza was so good, so big as well. The slices were like the size of my face, huge. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions about anything that we did, anything that we spent, or our itinerary, again, I'll have everything linked down below. The budget spreadsheet I use to track everything, and then also our itinerary for anyone that's planning a similar trip. If you guys watched my last vlog, I officially booked our Europe trip for later this year. I'm going with my best friend, which is gonna be an entirely different kind of trip, and tracking that because we're gonna be splitting everything 50-50. So if you guys wanna see a similar video to this, maybe more vlog style, like maybe I'll bring you guys along as I book everything and like plan everything. I don't know. Would that be interesting? Let me know if you guys want to see that. But yeah, hopefully this was helpful for anyone that is planning a similar trip, or maybe you're just nosy like myself. I love seeing what people do and how much they spend on their travels. Traveling is something I absolutely love and will always be a big priority for us. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I love you so much, and I'll see you very soon for another video. Bye guys.